Mom, her journey, her life, her legacy. It is always after the fact we think of questions to ask our parents about what life was like for them as a child, how they looked at life in general, what they thought of their children as they grew, matured, and chose careers and spouses. With Mom, it was always about her Lord and her family, her priority and her joy. As a child, she was born in 1924 in Farley, Iowa, grew up in both Illinois and another small town in Iowa with an older brother who adored her. Mom's name, Alcris, was a combination of her parents' names, Alice and Chris, an unusual name for the 1920s era. She was born Pink, so her dad's pet name for her was Pink, which stuck with her throughout her life. Her dad was a concert pianist and piano tuner, a telegrapher for the railroad, and a mayor. An odd mix of career choices, but effective through the Depression eras. Her growing up years in a small town with an at-home mom was not unusual. It was all about faith and family, of which they had plenty. Her grandma Nickerson lived nearby, and she would spend summers there. Alcris was a tomboy. She loved tree climbing, swinging on orange crates with her brother, and caring for her cherished cat Tawny. As she grew up, her beauty and her zest for life showed through. She had an adventuresome spirit, which took her from the snows of Iowa to the coast of California, and then on back to the deep snow of Wisconsin. Her beauty on the inside as well as outside, she was destined for the role of nurse from little on, caring for and about other people. She went to the Milwaukee School of Nursing after high school graduation, completing her career with the BSN degree. A turn of events happened in 1946 when Alcris began writing to a pen pal in Australia. John was in the Royal Australian Air Force, a handsome man with an Aussie accent and a way of writing that would turn a girl's head and heart. They fell in love by letter without ever having met. In 1947, John proposed by letter to Alcris and traveled to Iowa, staying with the Hoshin family until their marriage in 1948. They were married in the small Lutheran church in Aurora, Iowa. In those days, travel to America from Australia was nearly impossible, except if one had money. But Alcris was surrounded by family and friends, and all welcomed John into the family. Alcris and John, or Pink and Jack as they were nicknamed, moved to Canada where John was part of the Royal Canadian Air Force. They were blessed with David in July 1949, moved back to Iowa a year later, and had Margaret in May 1952. They were fortunate to have a home just down the street from Grandma and Grandpa Hoshin with small-town life and lots of love. In 1954, Alcris and John moved to Independence, Missouri, and less than a year later, in October 1955, Alcris gave birth to twin girls, Diane and Denise. It was unexpected. In those days, there was no such thing as ultrasound, and the doctor could only hear one heartbeat throughout the pregnancy. Their family was complete, and Alcris continued her role as mother, wife, and caregiver, working part-time as a registered nurse at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, while John worked as a mechanic at Ryder Truck Rental. Even as she worked nights as a nurse, Alcris worked tirelessly in the home, cooking, cleaning, and raising 4 children to adulthood. Her girls worked with her at the hospital as volunteer candy stripers, sharing in her gift of caring for others. She also threw her energies into the church, volunteering at the church school and making sure her children had a good Christian education, even if it meant sacrificing in other ways. She made Australian food for Jack on a regular basis, from lamb to lamingtons, even making the newspaper for making rosella jam from plants grown from Australian-born seeds. Alcris had the opportunity to visit Australia a few times to see John's family and understand his culture better. She loved the country and his family, and would have gone more frequently if able. Through her visits to Australia, it sparked an interest in genealogy for both her family and John's relatives. She pursued the family history with the same fervor and joy as her life, and wrote detailed accounts with pictures of the family history right up to her death. As the kids grew and left home, they married and began families of their own, returning from California and Illinois to bring their grandchildren to Grandma's house and Grandpa's house. Distance was no object for Grandma as she traveled often by air or train, visiting family and fully spoiling her grandchildren. She was very competitive, and with the grandchildren she had no leniency when playing games with Grandma. She would get right on the floor with the grandkids to play everything from checkers to board games. It didn't matter the age level. The grandkids were always ready to play games with Grandma. She also loved to read to the grandchildren, and many an evening would be spent reading their favorite book, Willy Woo Woo, snuggled up on Grandma's lap. Alcris and John celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a party given by the children. Many images of them together were taken over the years. Both Alcris and John retired from their careers as nurse and mechanic. The years passed by, and children and grandchildren grew to great-grandchildren. Visits to loved ones still occurred, but Alcris, even in later years, learned the new skill of email. She picked up the computer rather quickly and communicated by letter and email to her grandchildren and children. She also never missed an opportunity to send a birthday and anniversary card with stickers for the younger ones. She loved going out to eat with family and friends. As her health failed with heart disease, her ability to visit her children diminished. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren continued to visit as she started on oxygen and became homebound. Through her day-to-day battle with heart disease, her joy in family and her Lord never wavered. On the day she died in July 2006, all 4 children, her husband of 57 years, and her granddaughter Monica were around her, singing her favorite hymns and reading scripture as she met her Lord. Timothy John Kelm, her grandson, met her in heaven a year later. I am sure they had a big hug for each other.